What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Alright, so we are going to continue our coverage over X-Men Inferno. Now, as you know, we are currently covering all the tie-ins before we jump back into the main series for X-Men Inferno, or the main chapters for X-Men Inferno. Now, our last video, we covered the Avengers, but now we're going to cover the Fantastic Four. Now, let me tell you real quick. These tie-ins are not really that great. Yes, they do have some connections to Inferno, but not really until the very last chapter. And you see what I mean as we go through today's video. And so getting into today's comic book video, we're going to pick up with a character known as Graviton. Now, when it comes to Graviton, he first appeared in Avengers number 158. Now, when it comes to this character, he has the ability to increase or decrease gravity on a certain object, or really people as well. Now, when it comes to Graviton, he's on his way back over to Earth after being defeated by the Avengers recently. Now, on his way back, he realized that something big is currently happening on Earth, really in one particular area, and that would be New York. And of course, he is talking about Inferno, but either way, he heads towards that location. Now, something I should remind you about when it comes to Inferno is that we're still in the early parts of the actual event. And so by this point of this tie-in, the only thing you're having right now is that different objects are coming to life. They're being possessed by demonic energy or just demons straight up. And so now you have different objects trying to kill off innocent people. And you have the Fantastic Four realize what's happening in their city. And so you have our heroes going out of their way to protect innocent people from these crazy objects. But after that, you didn't have the Human Torch leave, because around his time in Marvel Comics, he was married to Alicia Masters. Now, something else I should also mention is that around his time in Marvel Comics, you didn't really have the Fantastic Four. You had the Fantastic Three, the Human Torch, the Thing, and She-Thing, and that's really it. Now, after you have the Human Torch leave, we shift our focus over to Ben Grimm and She-Thing. Now, She-Thing's real name is Sharon Ventura, and really, before she became She-Thing, she was actually Miss Marvel for a very short period of time, but then she was mutated into, well, a She-Thing. Now, here's the thing, no pun intended, you have Ben Grimm telling her, hey, Reed just called me up, and he has some great news. He might have found a way to actually cure you, and that would be great. But here's the problem. You see, when it comes to Sharon, she kind of got used to the idea of how she looks. But on top of that, she kind of wants to go back to her old ways. But then she also loves how she looks right now. And so for her, this is going to be a very difficult choice to make. But that kind of leads us back into the main focus of this chapter, which is Graviton. Because once he does reach New York, you have Ben Grimm and She-Thing see him, and they begin to battle against him. Now, the Human Torch, he's not there at the moment because, again, he went to go check in on his wife, Alicia. But then, while we're being with her, he sees what's happening to his team at the moment. And so he jumps into the battle. Now, I do want to say that this whole entire story arc is really going to focus on the Human Torch and his abilities, because his abilities is tied into what's currently happening in X-Men Inferno. Either way, while you have our heroes trying their best to stop Graviton, he is showing why he is such a strong opponent. But then that leads into the Human Torch pushing past his limits. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when it comes to the Fantastic Three, not the Fantastic Four, they actually struggle fighting against Graviton. He is using his abilities in different kind of ways to stop our heroes. When it comes to the Human Torch, he takes away all the air around the Human Torch, leaving him without the ability to actually flame on. But then you have the Human Torch realize, hey, if I'm able to flame on and then go towards Graviton, but then try to add more air around me by increasing my flames, I should be able to take him down. And that is what he does. There's a point where you have the Human Torch being able to make flame shadow clones of himself to distract Graviton, to confuse Graviton, to allow the rest of the team to be able to help out then. But when it comes to the Human Torch, he just keeps pushing and pushing until he reaches a new limit. Now, after a while, you do have our heroes being able to take down Graviton, but this leads into a problem for the Human Torch. He's now unable to flame off so easily like he used to. Now he really has to concentrate when he wants to flame off. Now, as we dive into the next chapter, we're gonna have to shift our focus over to a different villain, and that is going to be Kang the Conqueror. Now, here's the thing. Yes, this is the second time we had Kang the Conqueror in one of these story arcs for X-Men Inferno tie-ins. Except in our last video for the Avengers, that was not the main Marvel Universe Kang. That was a Kang from an alternate Earth. This time, we are going to see the main Marvel Universe Kang. But we have to get there first. And so you have our heroes just walking around the city and realizing their city is going crazy thanks to Inferno. But they did run into Mantis, who is currently being attacked by a bunch of parking meters that are all being possessed by demonic energy. Now, once you do have our heroes being able to work with her to defeat the army of parking meters, now, something I should mention is that around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Mantis, she had supposedly died in Marvel Comics. And that led into a very interesting story arc where we're currently in for her character. You see, when it came to Mantis, we thought she died, but she did not. Her soul was just broken up into multiple pieces that were spread across the universe. Now, one of those pieces had arrived on Earth earlier, where she actually came to life again and joined the Avengers, the West Coast Avengers, but then she left. But now we have another fragment coming to life. And when it comes to this fragment, she's still kind of confused about what exactly happened to her. And on top of that, she lost her child. And so she's coming to the Fantastic Four for help. Now, again, this is just a fragment of her soul. Down the road, there's going to be a story arc where they bring all 5 pieces together. But either way, you do have the Fantastic Four agree to help her to get her missing child back. Now, there are more pieces to her story that I should talk about, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to leave it out. Now, we're going to shift our focus over to Kang the Conqueror, who's now going to be the main bad guy for today's video. Now, like I said earlier, this Kang the Conqueror is our Kang the Conqueror, the main Marvel Universe Kang. Now, when it comes to this Kang, his goal is to actually steal a powerful weapon that was made by a Celestial. But here's the thing, that weapon is most likely not going to appear until the year 2005 up to 2020, because the storyline took place in 1990. And the only way to get that weapon is going inside a time bubble. But when it comes to Kang the Conqueror, he says, why would I wait until then to go inside the time bubble to only have a possibility of getting that weapon? Why don't I go ahead and go out of my way to find that Celestial and go ahead and get the weapon for myself before the other Kangs from other universes try to get their hands on it? Now, he does realize that a Celestial is a very powerful being that cannot be taken down so easily. And so what he is going to do is kidnap Mantis and use her powers as the Celestial Madonna to wipe out the Celestial and then take the weapon, because the Celestial is currently asleep underneath a mountain in California. And so now we shift our focus back over to our heroes. Now, while you have our heroes walking around the city, they do get attacked by Kang the Conqueror. Now, when it comes to Kang, like Graviton, he can be a very powerful opponent for some characters, especially our heroes at the moment. And so they're having a hard time trying to find a way to actually stop Kang the Conqueror. But while the fight goes on, you then have the Human Torch continue to have struggles in controlling his flame abilities. But either way, at the tail end of this battle, Kang the Conqueror is able to grab Mantis and get the heck out of there. Now our heroes now know where he is going because he did mention that he's heading over to where the Celestial is currently sleeping, underneath a mountain in California. And so our heroes head towards that location. And so you do have both parties arrive at the location. Now, once you have both parties arrive, they continue to fight against each other. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you why the Human Torch is having a hard time controlling his ability, because we're not told technically until the very end of the story arc. But here's the thing. When it comes to X-Men Inferno, we already know that demons from Limbo are coming over to Earth, attacking New York, but also they're releasing demonic energy, demonic magic, and that kind of magic is currently affecting the Human Torch. And so because of that, he's having a hard time controlling his ability. And so, while you have both parties fighting against each other, once again, we get another example of the Human Torch having a hard time controlling his ability, to the point where he literally explodes in front of his team, but also in front of Kang. Now, after the explosion, you have Kang believe, okay, with one member of the Fantastic Four down, I should be able to escape. But when he turns around, his hostage is missing. Mantis has somehow disappeared. Now, as we jump into the final chapter for this story arc, we are introduced to another villain for this story. Yes, this story gets even crazier. But as we dive into the third chapter, we see that the Human Torch is okay. But you have Kang the Conqueror realize he has to go. He has to find Mantis to figure out what exactly happened to her. Now, before he leaves, he makes sure to leave a small present for our heroes. That small present is going to be a bomb. Now, you have the Human Torch go out of his way to take that bomb and throw it into space so that no one will be killed by the explosion. But then you have our heroes realize they have to head back to New York to, one, figure out what's happening to the Human Torch, but two, hope to find out what happened to Mantis. Now, when it comes to Kang the Conqueror, he does remind us about a certain thing we learned in our last video. You see, the other Kang learned that this Inferno event is playing around with time. You see, the other Kang realized that this Inferno event is destroying other future possibilities down the road. Talking about the idea that different characters who are possibly born in those possible futures are no longer going to be around because their future have been erased. And so when it comes to our Kang, who is from a future, he's having a hard time figuring out where to go at this current moment with all his machines, because all his machines are used in a way to guide him through the past for him to figure out how things are going to be played out in the present moment. But now, with time being constantly changed over and over again, possible futures being erased, he has no idea where to go or how to find Mantis. Now, he does find out there's something going on in the middle of Inferno, and he heads over to that location. But the problem is, for him, the Fantastic Four had also arrived back to New York City, and they're also heading towards that same location. And so once you have all the heroes head into the middle point of New York, and they kind of find out that Mantis was kidnapped by Mantis, and I really hope I pronounce his name correctly. Now, this is a character who's not really that popular in Marvel Comics, not really that big time of a character in Marvel Comics. Now, when it comes to Mantis, he was basically born with a weak body, but he did turn over to black magic, where he was able to learn if he is able to sacrifice the lives of innocent, well, he'll begin the process of gaining a whole lot more magical abilities. He'll become stronger, possibly god-like. And so there goes his weak body. And so over the years in Marvel Comics, he would try different kinds of schemes to pull this off. But a lot of times he would have been stopped. Like, for example, the last time he came around in Marvel Comics before this story arc, he was stopped by the Scarlet Witch and he was sent over to Limbo. Now, the only reason why he's back right now, because let's not forget, when it comes to X-Men Inferno, you have portals open from Limbo into Earth, and so he was able to come into Earth thanks to that portal. But now he is trying his best to use Mantis to gain a whole lot of powers. You see, when it comes to the universe, our galaxy, you're going to have the planets align for the first time in many years. But if he's able to kill her right at the moment when all the planets are aligned, he should be able to gain a whole lot of power to become technically a god. And so now our heroes have to find a way to save Mantis, but also work alongside with Kang. Now let me tell y'all how our heroes are able to overcome this situation. So when it comes to our hero, he said, hey, he just told us if the stars align and he kills off Mantis at that exact moment, he'll become a god. And so you have She-Thing tell Kang, why don't we go out of our way to make sure the stars don't align? Make sure that one of the planets is off just a tad bit. Because if that's the case, then he cannot complete his task. And so you have Kang and the Human Torch go out of their way to go into space, and you have the Human Torch take a small device that Kang had built to make sure that Mercury is just off a tad bit. Because right when you have Necromantis try to kill off Mantis, but also hoping the stars are aligned, it doesn't work because Mercury is off just by a few seconds. Now here's the thing, because he was kind of hoping to pull this off. Because he was not able to pull this off, his time is up on Earth and he has to go back to Limbo. That's it. That's literally it. And that's how our heroes were able to save Mantis. Now, when it comes to Human Torch and Kang, they're still out in space. And this leads into the conclusion of the story arc. And you have Kang say, listen, even though we did help each other out to stop Mantis being killed off by that crazy bad guy, I'm still a bad guy, and I want to make sure you die here. And so you have Kang the Conqueror leave the Human Torch out in the middle of space. And that's a problem because the Human Torch must try to travel across space to make it back to Earth. But we already know that's not even possible. And so we're left to believe that the Human Torch is going to die until we see at the very last page, the Silver Surfer is on his way back to Earth because he realized that somebody had messed with a planet nearby Earth. Of course, talking about Mercury. He is talking about the Human Torch and Kang the Conqueror. And so we already know, hopefully, that in the next story arc, for the Fantastic Four, the Silver Surfer is going to save the life of the Human Torch. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.